Hi, hello, and welcome. I am beating every PS2 game to ever exist, and today we're playing Sly 2 Band of Thieves. Sly 2 Band of Thieves was released in 2004 and was developed by Sucker Punch Games. It's the second game in the series, which I think is quite obvious because it's called Sly 2, and it's a sequel to the first game, Sly Cooper and the Thievius Racoonus. The plot of this game follows after the first one. In the first Sly game, we killed the big bad evil man Clockwork, and we thought he was doomed forever, but unfortunately he actually wasn't, and the metal pieces of his body were taken and are being used by more evil people to do more evil things. There's a few different evil people that are using his lungs, his wings, his talons, his stomach, all sorts of things, because obviously that makes sense. They can use his actual body parts to power their evil operations. And our goal is to stop these bad people from doing bad things with these clockwork parts. And that's basically the plot of this game. It consists of 8 episodes, they call them, where each episode you're in a different area with a different villain and you are plotting to steal back the clockwork part that they're using for their operation. It's a pretty simple plot. You just go to a new place, steal the clockwork part, and go on to the next. So pretty much how the setup of this game works is to start the episode, you first do a recon mission. You sneak into the bad guys' headquarters or their main operation center, and you take a few snapshots of all the various parts. You check out the situation, you look at who's there, so you can figure out a plan to break in, sneak past the people, or beat them up if necessary. I'm not against that either. So you take the pictures of all this stuff, and then you sneak on back to your headquarters and give them to Bentley. And Bentley, being the massive big brain genius that he is, he kind of somehow instantly comes up with a plan that works every time. I don't really know how he does that. He's kind of smart. He literally gets like 4 or 5 pictures of the room and is like, aha, I have unlocked the solution to this puzzle. So Bentley is a genius, so he does that. And then once you have the plan formulated and set, you have to do some setup missions before you do the final heist. Various things such as stealing keys to break into places, hacking a system with Bentley so you can have access to the internal operations, or as Murray, you just beat people up to get them out of the way. Stuff like that. And then obviously after you finish all the setup missions, you do the heist. You get the clockwork part, you beat up a bad guy or two, and you go on your merry way. It's a quite simple concept of how the game works, and this is the same formula for each episode. I don't mind that setup, but I wish it was a little bit different because it was quite repetitive, because that was literally all 8 episodes. That's what the setup was. You rinse and repeat the same formula, so it's not the most creative thing. It wasn't bad though. And then the missions themselves, there wasn't a whole lot of variety between them. Yes, there are level specific missions, such as the mission where you have to jump on the back of elephants and smack the gems off their headpieces to use them to your advantage. But throughout the game, they kind of use the same ideas multiple times. Bentley's main thing is hacking into systems, which all the levels are basically the same thing, just with a slightly different setup and different varieties of enemies. Murray's main thing is just beating people up, so every mission you play with him, that's pretty much all you do. And Sly's thing is being stealthy, so you climb around, you steal keys from people, you hide from people to sneak past guards to get into different areas, stuff like that. And like I said, they reuse the same stuff kind of over and over again, which again, it's not the most terrible thing, because of course each level has different themes and different layouts, so it felt a little bit different. However, the main issue that I have with the missions, other than them being similar, because that's really not that big of an issue, is that as the game progressed, I feel as though they just made the missions long for no reason other than to make the game longer, which I did not enjoy because I don't see the purpose in that. Like, for example, one of the missions they repeated a couple times was having to rob guards of their keys to unlock some door or a machine or something else. Towards the beginning, you have to steal 2 or 3 keys and then you can get in. But towards the end, you have to steal 4, 5, 6 keys, which is just kind of pointless. They just made the missions at the end longer just because they could. And for me, that felt like it was just being tedious for no reason, because I'm pretty sure each level has the same amount of missions, a give or take a mission or two, but the later episodes just took so much longer because the missions were just longer, but they're still kind of the same thing. So that's why I didn't really like that, because as the game got further and further, it was just getting more and more repetitive. And don't get me wrong, I really really like this game. I love platformers, and this is a very unique one, and it has a unique system with Sly and his ability to grab onto poles and hooks and walk on wires and stuff like that. I really like it, but it was just pretty repetitive is the main issue. And yes, I know it's more geared towards children, so it's not going to be the most creative and varied thing in the gameplay such as that. But after playing it for as long as I played it, I feel like playing the first 4 episodes of the game is enough. I think if they cut the amount of episodes in half, make each episode longer themselves and less repetitive, and I think it would have been a much better game. Not saying that the game is bad, I'm just saying that it could have been slightly better in that aspect. But speaking of the gameplay, I quite enjoy it. Other than the repetitiveness in the missions, I like the gameplay because, like I said, Sly 2 is a very unique platformer / stealth action game. It's not just you jump from a platform to the next platform. You have that whole system of Sly with being able to grab onto all the various poles and sit on top of poles and hooks and whatnot that are glowing blue. And I like that because, to my knowledge, there's no other games that are like that. Plus, in this game, unlike the first game, you're able to play as Bentley and Murray, so it adds more variety to gameplay as well. Murray's main thing is he's a big oaf that beats people up, so I like that. Bentley's main thing is he's a little weakling boy, but he's a big genius, so he hacks into things, which I know I mentioned that the hacking is kind of the same thing over and over again, but again, that's not me saying I disliked it. I was just saying that it's kind of the same thing, because I actually do like the hacking sections. They're actually one of my favorite parts of the game because it's a little arcadey thing that's just fun to do, because between all the characters and their different strengths and weaknesses, it breaks up the gameplay well enough so the repetitiveness is less of an issue that way, because also each level it has a different amount of missions for each character, so each episode is a little bit mixed up, so that kind of helps with the repetitiveness. It eases it down a little bit where it's not as big of an issue anymore. I will still say though that the later episodes, there was kind of no reason for the missions to be just elongated for seemingly no reason. I think I would have rather there have been more missions rather than the same amount of missions but just extended. However, the overall gameplay I enjoyed. Very unique platforming techniques, good variety with being able to use 3 different characters with several different missions and their strengths and weaknesses. The unique themes of each levels are very nice, and of course the unique levels having different layouts is very nice. There was one thing in the game though that I didn't see necessary whatsoever. It wasn't a bad addition, but it's not necessary. Is the fact that you're able to buy moves for each character and then you can use said moves. There was a couple that you were required to buy to beat the game, but for the most part, 90% of them you don't need. I might have bought 1 or 2 just to see what they were, but then once I realized like, oh, I'm never going to use this, I didn't buy them again. It's just moves like being able to dive with slide and being able to slide around, but it is a good way to have the coins actually be used for something. But I also like that because there was the option to buy moves in each level, there was actually little treasures hidden in and out of buildings that you can grab onto your back and take it back to the safe house to sell for more money, like a few hundred coins each. So that's pretty cool. A little extra feature that doesn't hurt the game, doesn't help the game either, but it's just there and it's not a terrible thing. It's just an extra addition. I want to go back to the story now. So as another little recap, in the first game we defeated Clockwork. He exploded and all his parts went everywhere, and then after that all these other bad guys came in and took different parts of him for the certain needs and uses they wanted. So we go into each area, take them away from the bad people because they're bad and we don't want them to do bad things. But then right before we get to the final episode, we actually get bamboozled. They knock us out, put us in a cage, and while that's happening, somebody snuck into our safe house and took all the Clockwork parts. And after they got all the Clockwork parts, they were actually able to reassemble them and bring the full Clockwork back to life in a way. It wasn't actually Clockwork, but the machine was back alive, and Constable Neela, who we thought was a policeman this whole time, was actually a bad guy. She jumps into Clockwork and takes control of it. First of all, weird. Second of all, kind of scary. So then when we're on this airship at the end, she's flying around like a psychopath. So our main goal of the last level is to take her out. And that's exactly what we do. This game ends in a very similar fashion to the first game, where it's a boss battle against Clockwork. Another air battle where you're shooting her down, and then she's on the ground, she's dying. So we have to finish her off, smack her to bits, and then she goes kapuya. The parts go everywhere and they melt. So the Clockwork parts are finally gone. They go to pieces, they become mush in the water, and they will no longer cause troubles. And we save the day once again. And so that's how the story went. And also, Bentley kind of gets squanched by Clockwork's mouth, and I think is crippled for life now. So that's kind of unfortunate for him. But, you know, that doesn't really matter to us. And so, now that we've discussed the story of the game, the gameplay, and how everything works, we're gonna do the rating. Starting with the story, I feel like the story of this game is not that creative, because in a way it's kind of the exact same thing as the first game. In the first game, you're going from different level to level with different bad guys to take back the pages of the Thievius Racoonus that they stole. And then at the end of it, you'll kill Clockwork. And in this game, you go from level to level, defeating the bad guys to take back the Clockwork parts that they stole. And then at the end, you defeat Clockwork. So it's kind of the exact same story. Yes, obviously there's actually different storylines with the different characters and the different things they're doing. Obviously, they're not the same bad guys, but the main overall story and how the game works is the same. So I'm gonna give the story a 6 out of 10 because I believe it kind of lacks creativity. And the gameplay is very similar to the first game as well, because it can't really be different. It's the second game in the series using the same stealthy system as Sly. That's just the Sly formula. But the addition of being able to use all 3 characters and them having different strengths and weaknesses and having several different missions is a much better gameplay wise. I love being able to play as all 3 different characters. To me, that's the main appeal to the gameplay of this game, is the use of all 3 characters. But then there are a couple downsides to the game for stuff I've already mentioned, like the fact that each episode, the format is basically the same thing, with getting a recon, making a plan, setting up the plan, performing the plan. And also, like I said, the fact that towards the end of the game, the missions just got longer for seemingly no reason. I didn't really like that. The missions weren't even really harder. For the most part, they were just longer. I would like it better if the difficulty increased rather than just the length of the missions. And then with the final boss being quite similar to the first game as well, it was kind of whatever. And don't get me wrong, I really like this game. It's a game from my childhood, it's nostalgic, but I wanted to try to stay objective, I don't know, whichever one is the one where I don't have feelings. I want to look at it from a different perspective, be like, is this game as good as I remember it, or I think it actually is? The answer is no, it's not as good. The game is still good. I really like the game, but it's not as good as I remember it being. So the gameplay, it'll still be rated high. I'm still going to give it a 7 out of 10. If you asked me how I thought about this game before I replayed it, I would have told you it was a 10 out of 10. This game's awesome. And I still think this game is very good. I still really enjoyed it. It's still nostalgic to me, but not as good as I remembered and hoped and wished. So yeah, there you have it. We have discussed and rated Sly 2 Band of Thieves. Please let me know your thoughts on this game in the comments. Do you agree with the things I've said, or am I an idiot and I'm completely wrong? And if you enjoyed this video, I would greatly appreciate it if you leave a like, subscribe to the channel. So I thank you for watching. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.